Well, good day, everybody, and welcome to the Psychological Disorders edition of 5 Minute Psych. In this 5-minute segment, we'll look at anxiety disorders, beginning with a discussion of anxiety disorders in general, before focusing on 4 different types of anxiety disorders and the potential causes of each. Anxiety disorders are the most common category of psychological disorders, as roughly 1 in 5 adults will suffer from an anxiety disorder at least once in their life, and it will affect females twice as often as males. There are different types of anxiety disorders, but they all share the feeling of worry or fear that interferes with the person's daily life. You'll see that these disorders differ with respect to what triggers the fear and the level of the fear response. A phobia is a strong, irrational fear that's triggered by a specific object, like snakes, or a specific situation, like heights. The person suffering has a strong desire to avoid the source of the phobia, even though they may recognize that their fear is out of proportion to the danger involved, like the snake is in an aquarium or they're standing on a strong bridge. But that doesn't matter. Their reaction is automatic and visceral, and they feel out of control with fear. Behaviorists explain how phobias develop by turning to classical conditioning, where the object of the phobia is associated with something fearful, or observational learning, where the person learned about what was fearful from watching someone else, like a parent, react to the object of the phobia. The fear reaction could then be maintained through operant conditioning, because every time the object of the phobia is avoided, the person is negatively reinforced by making the bad feeling of fear go away. Unlike phobias, generalized anxiety disorder is a less intense feeling of fear that isn't triggered by anything specific because the feeling is there all the time. The person suffering would perpetually worry about everything to the point where eating, sleeping, and daily functioning would become difficult. Cognitive psychologists turn to maladaptive thoughts as the explanation, saying that some people may ruminate about negative life events that could happen, even if the chances are very small. For instance, they may stay up all night worrying about a meteor hitting their house. Neuropsychologists say that people with generalized anxiety disorder may have abnormal activity of GABA, the main inhibitory chemical in our brain. For most of us, GABA is triggered when our arousal gets too high so that we don't stay anxious for too long. But for people with generalized anxiety disorder, their GABA may not kick in soon enough or strong enough. Drugs like benzodiazepines that increase GABA help relieve symptoms of generalized anxiety disorder. Panic disorder is like a phobia in that there's an intense feeling of fear, but like generalized anxiety disorder, the feeling of fear isn't triggered by anything specific, and the panic attack may seem even random. For minutes, the person feels like they might be dying as they experience chest pains, numbness, choking, and an intense feeling to escape. But because the attack is so terrifying and occurs so randomly, many end up living in fear of the next attack. Cognitive psychologists say that people with panic disorder may simply be misinterpreting normal body sensations and then blowing them out of proportion. For example, many of us get a little heart flutter, but someone with panic disorder may focus on this to the extent that they create their own panic attack. Neuropsychologists say that at the root of this disorder is a malfunctioning brain circuit involving the amygdala and hypothalamus. Obsessive-compulsive disorder occurs when someone has disturbing thoughts that cause anxiety, and then they act out some ritual to relieve the anxiety. Often the person knows that their thoughts are irrational and that their actions are pointless, but they can't control themselves. In their head, the thought, "Did I turn off the coffee pot?" reoccurs 20 times before they get on the bus to work, and they have to backtrack each time to double-check it, turning it on and off exactly 10 times to be sure. But as soon as they get some distance away from the coffee pot, the thoughts come back, creating anxiety, and they have to go back and check it again. Cognitive psychologists say that some people are just more prone to unwanted repetitive thoughts, and then to believe that they can neutralize these thoughts by doing some behavior. Also, they would have learned that doing the behavior relieves the stress of the thoughts. Neuropsychologists instead say that people with OCD have low serotonin, and medications that increase serotonin relieve symptoms of OCD. Also, they point to overactive brain circuits involving the amygdala and areas of the cortex that convert sensory input into thoughts and actions. Well, we just discussed anxiety disorders by focusing on 4 different types and the potential causes of each. Now, aren't you glad you had 5 minutes?